points that will get added on to your homework grade.
Woohoo.
And that's that bit done. The two things I want to focus on are some information about what's called the replacement test and how that's going to work, and then the last bit is about the final and what that's going to look like, and so on. So let's start with the replacement test. Essentially on Tuesday, there's going to be a new test called the replacement test, and it will be used to change, if you want to take the test, that is, to change your grade for one of your tests. So whatever one of the 4 tests you've done, if you only, the lowest one will get rubbed out, and the grade, the replacement test grade will replace that, provided you do better in the replacement test. So if your worst test is 40 and you take the replacement test and let's say you get 38, then nothing will change, right? But if the replacement test you got 60 or 70, then I would change it. So that's what that's about. Now it is optional. It'll take, 3 hours of your day. So I suggest that if you have an average test score of 90 or above, that it's probably not going to change your grade to make it worthwhile for that amount of time. You could spend those 3 hours getting ready for your final, which would be much more advantageous. So, makes sense on Tuesday. Has to be done by midnight Tuesday, just like your usual test. Upload your working to Canvas. That's already, I think, in place, so hopefully that'll work without too many hiccups. And now we're moving to your final exam, which is going to take place on Friday, and it's not like a test. It starts at 1 and it finishes at 4, so it's not one of those you can start when you feel like it. You have to start at 1. Everybody's going to be taking the test at the exact same window of time, from 1 to 4, and you're going to be taking your test, and at 4 it will close. And then you've got 1 hour after it closes to send me any work in and upload it to Canvas like we usually do.
So it means, sir, that we can take the exam for 4 hours?
It's 3 hours.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But yeah, your exam is going to have 20 questions in it, and it's going to be cumulative, which means it's anything from week 1 to, chapter 1 to chapter 9, essentially, right? So we'll be able to do a whole load of different things. Half the things that you know won't appear in the test because there's more than 20 questions. There's more than 20 things that you've done, right? So there's going to be some questions that just won't appear. And there's a thing called Murphy's Law that says, do you know if you only study for half the stuff, that's the half of the stuff that doesn't appear in the test, right? So you got to assume that everything is possible, and then half the things that you've studied for won't happen. And that's better than missing bits out if you have to. I think, so, Jimmy, you're going to say something.
Yes, sir. Sorry to interrupt.
No?
So do you know the percentage, like, because we don't have an exam or test for chapter 9. So do you know what the percentage, what is the
yeah, all you're going to do is you're going to get your homework added on to that. So that'll change your homework grade. I can certainly, sounds like you want me to put that in and send it out as an updated. Is that what you're asking?
No, sir. I mean the final exam. Is there like lots of questions on the previous chapters, like chapter 8, 7, or 9?
Since there's only 20 questions and there's 9 chapters, the most chapters will be 2, and a couple of chapters will be 3 questions. Okay. So you won't get an awful lot of questions on anything. So if you're talking about chapter 9, you'll get 2 or 3 questions. That'll be it. And if you're talking chapter 4, there'll only be 2 or 3 questions. Most of them will be 2, and 2 of the chapters will have 3.
Question, on the replacement test, is that all of chapter 9? Or
yeah, no, the replacement test is not based on anything in particular. Okay, it's a bit like the final. It'll just be random questions from all the sections, because for some people it was test 4 that they wanted to fix, and others it's test 1. So I've just made a general test with a bit of everything in it, which tends to make it a little bit harder, but at least it's not all on one chapter that you might not be that good at. So it kind of balances out.
So you mean, sir, if we got like for the past 4 tests, we got below 90%. So you recommend to do the replacement?
I would, if your average is 90 or above, I wouldn't bother. You're not going to get much, if anything,
Okay.
worthwhile. You know, for 3 hours work, it's probably not worth it. It depends on the combinations. I'll give you some scenarios here. Suppose you've got something that's 3 really good ones and a horrible 42 or something, right? Something that you consider horrible anyway, right? Then you might want to do it for that 42. But if all your tests are like 87, 92, 83, 95, you know, those kind of numbers, you're probably not going to get much out of it, because the chances are that you'll gain 7 points divided by 4. You'd be lucky to get an extra 1% on your test grade, and that is only 30% of your grade. So that's 0.3%. That's what I mean. It won't make a big difference. So if you got a 0, definitely going to make a big difference. If you've got something where you got really, you know, a poor result in it, like 40 something, and the rest are way up there, then it's probably worth it. But any other combination, I wouldn't suggest it. But it's optional. You can choose to do it. If you just felt like, I want practice at doing another test so I can see what I'm not very good at, then, you know, go for it.
So if you get a lower score, it doesn't affect
it won't matter.
you have.
So if you end up getting it doesn't work out well for you, this replacement, I just won't use the number. You'll still keep the ones you've got.
Okay.
So it can't harm your grade. How about that? Can't harm it. Right, now, next details. There are 3 versions of your final. So which one do I use? So on the day of the final, you'll go to MyLab and you'll see 3 finals, final A, final B, and final C, and you're going to say, which one's mine? Because you only do one of them, right? You don't do all 3. Well, if your last name starts with A to G, you're going to do exam version A. These letters, you're going to do B, and O to Z, you're going to do C. So let's do a test. Jamie, which version of the exam are you going to be sitting on Friday?
Version A.
Okay. Charlotte, what version of the final are you going to be doing?
C.
Right, you see how it works? Easy to do?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to make sure I send this out as an attachment again, because if it never made it the first time, some people just don't look at Canvas as often as they should, and this is pretty important information that they need to know. So moving on, what are the rules for taking this? Well, the first thing is there are 3 versions. That means that not everybody, the tests are similar but not the same. So that will reduce cheating, because you could try and phone up Janice and Janice is doing A and you're doing C. She won't be able to help you much. You know, within each question, they very often change the numbers within the question. So even that would be it. So nobody should do that anyway. But basically, we're trying to make it very difficult for them. So here are the rules. You cannot communicate with any person about this exam except me, right? So you can email me, or actually what's going to happen is, see, on the day of the final, I'll have a Zoom meeting home. I'll just be sitting here doing some stuff. And if you really get stuck, you can just jump in, you know, into the Zoom meeting and ask me the question right off the bat. So don't communicate with anyone except me about it. You can't use the tutoring services or blogs. So you can't go to the tutoring service and say, give me help with this question that happens to be from the test. That's considered cheating. What you can use any notes, TI-84 calculator, formula sheets. As long as it's physically written down, it's a usable, right? So if it's a piece of paper or it's a PDF, that's essentially the same thing. You can use it. In fact, if you look at Canvas, we've got lots of things in PDFs that you could use. So these are here to prevent cheating. It's only fair that everybody is tested on their knowledge. Now, because the exam is a timed exam, you've got to be careful with your time management. See, some people will say, well, I don't need to know anything. I can go and look it up and find out how to do it, and I'll just write it down. Well, if you do that, it's going to take you too long. You won't have enough time. So try and restrict your time management to, oh, I'm going to have to look up how to do that because I've forgotten it, to as few questions as possible. So here's a couple of strategies that are useful. First one is, if you come across a question that you don't know how to do, or it's going to take you a while to look it up and check how to do it, leave that question till the end. Don't even do it right away. Wait till you've done all the good ones, the ones you know how to do first, then go back to that. Second, if you've done a question and you know it's the right method, but the answer at the end is kind of silly or it doesn't make sense to you, so you kind of know that you've screwed up, leave that question exactly as it is. Just make sure I see the working. And some people have said to me, well, it's very hard to do the working when it's a calculator. Do you know you can write down what the data you used on your calculator is? Right, I used X bar was this, I used N was this, right? Just write down the numbers that you were plugging into your calculator. And that's enough for me to double check, and I can check that it's right. So I would do that. And lastly, it's not a good idea to spend 20 minutes on a question. Imagine you spent 20 minutes on 5 different questions. Well, that would only leave you 80 minutes to do the other 15. Do you see that you're not going to get them finished? And all the questions are essentially worth the same amount. So time management is going to be it. So any questions about the take-home, not take-home, any questions about the final or about the replacement test, and then we can get started and go over some stuff.
So with the final, we have so you're saying that we have the capability to go through the questions and answer the ones that we can and go back and answer other ones later.
Yes.
We don't have to answer that question right there before it will let us move on.
Yeah, that's the plan. Now, what you might want to do is you might want to write down what that question is before you move on in case it locks you out of it, because you're going to show me it in the working when you upload it anyway. So that's what I'll use to grade those questions that you did that to.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
Regarding I really want to clarify this one, sir, because the total grade that you sent us on email is different on MyLab total grades, because I remember before you said that whatever you grade have on MyLab, that's your grade. So I'm confused.
Well, I probably shouldn't have said that then. We use a weighting of 30% on the tests and 30% on the homework, but I think the MyLab was set up there where the quizzes were used and weighted differently in the homework, and I think that's what's called the discrepancy. It's just where they put the things that you did, what boxes they put them into, I guess, is what I'm saying. So the ones that I've given you as a printout are the accurate ones.
The email.
The email, yeah. Now, when you look at, for instance, the things that aren't even on that, that's going to change your grade again. Participation is 10% of your grade. So I can tell just looking at some of you here that that's not going to be an issue. You're getting you're getting the full points. So that's worth 10% of your grade, and that will go on. And now this final, for instance, MyLab doesn't even cope with finals very well because it thinks they're all tests. It doesn't distinguish between a test 2 and a final. It just thinks they're all tests. It will grade that weirdly. So I wouldn't even look at your grade on MyLab after that. This one thing is going to be 30% of your grade. That's going to make a big difference. Can help you grade an awful lot if you do well in it. What will happen is once it's all finished and I've graded it, I will send you out one last email with everything that I know about your grades, and that gives you a chance to have a quick look over it and see what's going on. And it'll also be able to tell then what your grade's going to be in OASIS when you finally go and look at it. Do we still use OASIS, or is it now moved on? I think it's moved on now to CTC Link. So whenever you go to CTC Link, you'll see what your grade is. Okay. Yes.
Sorry.
No, keep going.
I actually forgot.
Okay, when it comes to you can tell me about it. Charnette, I think you had a question, so let's get started. What was your kind of question
Yes.
you want me to go over?
So section 9.3, and it was question number 1 that I had trouble with.
Okay, 931. Let me see if I can get that without pretty quickly.
If not,
really.
I have it already.
Okay, well, it might be easier for everyone else if they see it. And, well, it will be easier for me. So, if you could see what I'm doing here, it's scary. I'm hitting buttons left, right, and center, and I'm hitting the wrong button, and then I'm having to wind back. I'm hitting the right button this time, and I should be able to do it. Come on, load up. 991, did you say? 93.
9.3.
Oh, 93. Gotcha. I think I can click on that.
Yeah, because it's still open.
Right. Oh. Okay, that's not what I thought I could do. Yeah, I get a different version of yours, so what you see and what I go away. 93. I should be able to do it now. Preview, we're on it.
It's 9.3, sir.
93, gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, I hit 91.
Yeah.
Oh, can you see what I'm hitting?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you can see how I'm all over the place. Okay, this is the question, agreed? This is one?
I'm not seeing anything except.
Oh. Okay, then I'm going to go out and back in, and hopefully you'll see it when I do it. So I'm out, and then I'm back in. Are you seeing it now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Oh,
So
yeah, that's the thing.
that's Skyr, okay. So the median undergraduate grade point average for students accepted at a random sample of 12 medical schools in a country was taken. The mean GPA for these accepted students was 3.65 and their standard error was 0.06. And it's a normal distribution, which is fine.
I think this state distribution you said, sir, before that you're not going to include this one. Remember?
Oh,
I questioned it before.
oh, darn it, you are right, and I didn't kill it, did I? Because it's
Yeah,
still
I have
here.
notes here, so I remember that.
Oh, I do remember saying that. You're quite right. So the answer to your question tonight is very easy. We're not doing that question. So yeah, darn it in space. Let me see if I can do it this time.
Yeah,
if I
because
can remember.
I was like the answer that I got was not the answer that the
Yeah,
That was the
teacher gave.
problem because what they were doing is the numbers didn't match up the reality.
Right.
It was like everything was shifted to the right ones. I recollect. So there was something just wrong about this question, so I killed it.
Yeah, because
Or
they're
at least I
looking
should have killed it.
because they're looking for the T distribution critical value for the table. Remember the table?
Yeah, exactly, and that doesn't
Yeah.
work because we
Yeah.
don't do those types of questions
Yeah.
with a table. We do it with a calculator. So that was, I do remember all of that. Okay, so next question. Hopefully, I can actually do something a little bit more useful than just say we ain't doing that question.
Okay. Well, that was my.
That was it.
That was.
Can we do
that was-
topic then? Is there a general topic? It doesn't need to be a specific question. I can make up ones.
Let's see. That was.
Right. Are you all comfortable about how to use the TI-84 calculator? Oops.
Sorry.
Whoops. Right, let's try that again. Where was I? How to use the TI-84 calculator to do some of the questions involving hypothesis testing and involving 95% confidence intervals. Do you want to have a look at something like that?
Yeah. Can we review that?
Yeah, let's do that. Okay. So I'll stop sharing that one and I'll see if we can. Oops. You're going to have to wait a second. I'm just doing a quick screen grab of everybody that's here so you can get your extra credit. That's me copying that, and I'll stick it in a Word file. And I'll save it. Right, so we were about to do some questions involving using the calculator. So that's kind of where we're going to start. And I'm going to jump over to the white piece of paper and I'll show you a question. Okay, so let's suppose that let's do a confidence interval first. Let's suppose then that we collected some data and we found out that the average number of siblings, number of people in your family that we had was 3.5, and that the standard error was 1.2, and the sample that we used was 200 people. That's really all the information that you need to build a confidence interval. You need to know the mean of the sample, you need to know its standard error, and you need to know how large the sample is. And what we're going to now do is we're going to take that information. Which kind of confidence interval do you want? 90, 95, or 99?
95.
Okay, so we're going to do a 95% confidence interval. And it's going to fit in here. So what I'm now going to do is show you how we can do that on a calculator. And I've got a different kind of calculator today. Are you seeing a nice little picture here
Oh, yeah.
that looks like a TI-84 Silver Edition calculator?
Yes.
Right, so I like this one a little bit better than I like the emulator. This thing is called Wabbit Emu if you want to get one. It's free, so it's kind of cool. And so you do hit the button, you go on. Because it works just like a calculator. You know, if you leave your calculator, it goes off. This one even emulates a battery saver, which it doesn't need. So it's now working. Right? So if I hit the start button, then I move over to tests. Right? And then I scroll down. Where is it? Number 8, t-interval. I hit enter. So I'll do that again. I went start button. I went over to tests. And I scrolled down just below the thing to the guy called t-interval. And I hit enter. Now it's set up as data or stats. The one we're going to do is stats. So you go over there and you hit enter. So it's now working on stats. Now do you see that it asks for the information that you need? So it wants to know the mean of the sample, which in our case was 3.5. It wants to know the standard deviation. In this case, it's 1.2. It wants to know n, the number of people in the sample. You see, you basically just type in what you need. And then it has C level, confidence interval, right? Confidence level. 0.95 is perfect. That's 95%. If I wanted 99, I would go 0.99. If I wanted 90, I'd go 0.90. So you see, it's pretty easy to change to whatever you need. And then you hit the little cursor down to calculate. And when I hit this, boom, we have our confidence interval. And it starts at 3.33 to 2 decimal places, and it finishes at 3.67. So do you see that takes a lot of the stress off calculating confidence intervals using the t-distribution? Now, let me return to that question and we'll add some other questions to it.
Sir, excuse
Yes.
me. So since we're using the calculator, so how
Yes.
can we show our work on the paper?
Well, that
Just
is a-
put the value like
That is a
x.
good question. Let me show you what I would do. Just, are you look? Oh, darn it! See how good it is. I don't swear. I'm very good at not swearing. Have you noticed that? I growl a lot, but I don't swear. Okay. Do you see the calculator screen? Tell me I'm on the calculator screen now.
No, you're on the white screen.
I'm on the white screen. Third time lucky. It's menus within menus is the thing that's getting me. Are we on a
There.
calculator now? Yay.
Yeah.
What you would write down, if I can go back a little bit, do the start button, test, and then you go to number 8 and you hit this fella. You would tell me I was using 3.5, I was using 1.2, I was using 200, and I was using a C level of 0.95. So you would just basically tell me these are the numbers I was using, and that would be your working.
Do you want us to put if we use data or stats as well?
Well, yeah. Actually, after I've done this one, we'll show you what the data one would look like. Are we
Yeah.
cool on this fella right now?
Do you want us to show also if we're using 2 sample interval or T interval or?
You're only going to be able to use a T interval in this question. So, I mean, if you want to, you can
I
do
mean,
it.
for
but,
other questions, sir. Sorry, for other
we're
questions.
not doing a T interval, so you won't need to ever use it. In fact, if you are using it, you're using the wrong one. So,
No, I mean for the other questions, because on the other questions, of course, you're going to use a calculator also, but it's different formula, not the T interval.
well, yeah, you tell me in those other ones which one you're using. Yes,
Okay.
that makes sense. I agree. That does make sense. Right, now I'm going to go back to this question, the results that we've got, and I'm going to speak a little bit about other related questions that you typically get. Now, this is the interval that we've got. So, I mean, if you were thinking about what my working would look like, it'd probably look like this piece of paper, right? Can you see that I've basically told everybody what I'm doing?
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
got an interval. So question A, right? Imagine it was question A and it was this. Now, if that is the correct answer, then the software is going to give you the full points and I don't need to even check it. So I don't check the ones that are right. I only check the workings for the ones that the software says that's not the number I was looking for. Because very often the software is not very bright and you've done 90% of the working, right? And there's just a little rounding off mistake, or you typed 42 when you meant to type 24. You know, the types of little things that will change the answer.
Decimal or something.
Yeah, so that's when the working becomes very important, right? So I can check through what you did, and if it's the right method, you're not going to lose much. So imagine that was question A, but imagine question B is phrased something like this. Is there enough evidence to prove that the average is less than 4? Then all you will do is say yes or no to that question. It'll be a little pull down choice. You know, yes, there is enough evidence. No, there's not. There might be a third choice that says something like you cannot tell. But limited choices to these questions. So it's not for me checking for working here, but it's how do you answer this question? Well, in this interval, we are 95% confident that the true mean of all American families is somewhere between these two numbers. And it's saying, is there enough evidence to show that it's less than 4? Would you agree that all of these numbers are less than 4?
Yes.
So your answer will simply be take the box that has a yes in it, right? Now, can you imagine that it was is there enough evidence, blah, 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 to prove it's more than 3? Right. Well, the same kind of thing applies. Would you agree that all of these numbers in this interval, they're all bigger than 3? So you would say yes again. And suppose I say, is there enough evidence to prove that it's less than 3.5? Well, if you look at 3.5, isn't it inside this interval?
It's in
Yes.
between.
It's in between them, right? And if it's in between, then the answer might be bigger than 3.5. Couldn't it be 3.6, for instance?
The
So
answer is no.
in that situation, your answer is no. So if all the numbers are bigger than 3, you can say yes. If all the numbers are less than 4, you can say yes. But if they ask you to do a comparison on a number that's in between, right, it's inside this interval, then you can't say for sure that the answer is bigger than 3.5. You can't say for sure it's less than 3.5. It might be 3.5, it might be a bit bigger, right? It might be up to 3.6 in a bit. It might be a little bit less, it could be as low as 3.3 in a bit. And that's pretty much the type of finishing off question that you might get asked in that situation. So here's our next little thing I'm going to show you is still to do a 95% confidence interval. Am I on the calculator this time or not?
Yes.
Yes.
Yay, got it right this time. Okay. Now, I'm going to do some stuff here. Oh, good. Right. So let's suppose that we weren't given the mean and the standard deviation and the sample size. Let's just suppose that we were given the data as a list of numbers, right? 5, 7, 9, 11, 2, that kind of situation. Can we still get a 95% confidence interval when all you're given is the raw data, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
7 numbers, right? So imagine that was the question. So I'm going to go start, I'm going to go over to tests, and I'm going to go down to t-interval, right? Same place as before. But when you are given statistics like we were, you use this one. But when you're given data, you use this one. Now, when you hit data, you see how the information that you're going to be given is quite different. It says list L1, frequency 1, and then the confidence level, in this case, it's 95. Now, I have to put in the data, and I'm going to put it into list L1. So let me show you how you need to do that. You hit start. You do edit. And I think this happened like a way back in week 1. Remember how we did that? Start, edit. And now I can type in the number. So let's pretend that there was 7, it was 3, it was 2, somebody had 5, and I had 10, right? So that you type in the list of numbers in the question, right? So pretend it's those 5 numbers that we are going to build a 95% confidence interval based on. So when I go and I do my start and I move over to tests and I move down to this guy here, when I hit that guy, L1, perfect. Frequency, leave it alone. Confidence level, like it. Calculate. And in this case, the interval is 1.41, well actually 42 if you round it off, and 9.38. So let's see what that guy looks like. So you imagine that we went and did a very similar 95% confidence interval. And it ends up being 1.42 to 9.38. That is a very, very wide range, isn't it? For the average number of siblings in your family. And can you see one of the problems with it, why it was so large, was that the sample size was tiny. It was only 5 people. But you could still be asked the same questions, although they'd be a bit in the vague side. Is there enough evidence to prove that the average number of siblings is more than 1? Right, are all these numbers bigger than 1?
Yeah.
Yes. Is there enough evidence to show that it's at least less than 10? Yes.
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 Is there enough evidence to prove that it's less than 3.5?
No.
No. So you can still answer the same types of questions. So when you tell me statistics, or when you tell me, I can't remember what the numbers are, so I'm just going to pretend I remember what they were, right? But if you give me a data set, you can still create a 95% confidence interval in both those situations. So you feel comfortable about that's the type of question that you get, one of the kinds of questions you get in 9.3 the sums.
I'm okay with that. I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to the list, going
Right.
back to the beginning of the quarter where we talked about the mean and the median and all that whatnot, could you review that? Because that might be a question on the final, is finding the mean and the median.
Right. So
It's been
the question
a
would be
while.
find the mean and the median and whatever else, right?
Right.
Q1, all that good stuff, right?
Right. Can you review that?
Yeah. Let's show you how to do that on the calculator, because that's really
Yeah.
how I would do this. So you've been given a list of data. It's could be anything, right? The temperatures of 20 patients, whatever it might be. And we're trying to answer the question, what's the mean, what's the median, and all that good stuff. Right? So you hit start, and you go 1 edit. So you put your data in the same place I just put all those numbers. Now, I'm going to just delete these guys, right? And I'm going to pretend then that we collected some data, and I'm just randomly hitting numbers. But can you pretend these were real numbers in the question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm fed up. That's enough numbers, right?
Yep.
You imagine it was done. So once your numbers are in, you hit Start button. You go over to Calculate, and you see this guy called 1VAR-Stats.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's the guy we're going to use. Oh, now this is my TI-84, so it's a little bit easier to do on the emulator, because in the emulator, the menu is a little bit easier to work with. But essentially, all I'm going to do here is do a 1 variable starts, and I'm going to do it in L1. Now, to get L1, you hit blue button 1, because it was in L1 I stored all my data. Right. So when I hit enter, I should have all the guys I want. Well, there's a lucky thing. Would you believe those numbers that I just randomly typed in had a nice mean of 12? I was expecting a decimal there. So the mean is 12. That's what you get if you add them up. I don't think you're interested in that number. That's basically what you get if you square them and add them. Again, I'm not really interested in that. What does this SX represent?
Standard deviation.
Right, and that's typically the one you want. You don't really want to use that one, which is the population one. Oh, see that n equals 8? You can use that to make sure that you've done it right.
Yeah.
If you know there was 10 numbers in that list and it says 8, well, you go back and find the 2 that you missed and put them in.
Yeah.
Right, just add them to the bottom. Now, if you scroll downwards, you'll then get the smallest number was 1. Q1 is 2.5. The median is 6. Q3 is 10. And the maximum is 58. Do you know those 5 numbers are very often called a 5-figure summary? And what kind of picture do you tend to draw when you use the 5-figure summary? There's one particular kind of picture that you draw to show the data visually that uses those 5 numbers.
Normal graph.
Box and box and whiskers.
I'm drawing a blank.
Right. Box plot is one of its names, or box and whiskers, right? I'm going to go back to a piece of paper then, and I'm going to show you what that thing looked like, and it might come back to you when I do it this way. Right, so right now, we know that the minimum number was 1, that Q1 was 2.5, that the median was 6, that Q3 was 10, and that the maximum was 58. Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. So you draw a big long line, and you start at 0, and you need to go 10, 20, 30. Oh God, that number's huge. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. The smallest number is 1. You put a little mark there at 1. And the biggest number is 58. So you put a little guy there at 58. Q2 is 2.5, which is about here. The median is 6, which is about here. Q3 is 10, which is about here. You join these guys up and you go like this, and then you join this guy way up to here. Do you recognize that picture?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's the guy I was talking about.
Box plot. Okay.
Oh,
That's the box plot, right? Now you can look at those box plots, and I think what they tend to do is, don't they give you like 4 pictures and you pick the one that looks like that?
Mhm.
Yes.
That's how they kind of do it in the book, right? How they do it in the software. And they, you know, you hit a little thing and there's a little list of numbers, you know, like the ones I've got here. And then you've got picture A, you know, that's picture A. So that's the one you pick. And then there's another picture B and it looks like this, you know, and there's another picture C and it.
Or maybe you will select one and kind of line up it like what do you call that? Ascending to descending, something like that.
Right. So yeah. So you don't normally actually have to draw the picture because that's very difficult in software, but you do have to know what the picture looks like so you can use it in some way to compare it with a choice to pick the right one or put them in order or whatever.
In order, yeah.
Yeah. While I've got this guy in front of me, I've seen this kind of question appear. Let's not get that goes through. Here are 4 box plots. Right, that's what they ended up looking like. Which one of those 4, I guess I'll call them A, B, C, D. A, B, C, or D. Which one of those 4 is most likely to have came from a symmetric data, right? A nice single hill symmetric data. A, B, or
A.
all quite confident? You're right. Symmetric. What name do we give to data that has the shape that B has got?
Skewed to the left.
Almost. The skewed
Almost.
part. Skewed to the right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I missed
This bit here, this long line is called a tail. So whatever tail is longest, that's the name that you use. So in the right-hand side, you see how the tail is longer.
that. Mhm.
Right. So that's skewed to the right. So this one here that's just below it, won't that be skewed to the left?
No, C, skewed to the left.
Okay. And then the last one, D, I'm just going to call it nothing. It doesn't have a name. You know, if you just randomly pick numbers, there isn't a skewedness or a symmetry or nothing. It's just kind of here, there, and everywhere. That's the kind of box plots that you get when nothing interesting is happening. Because you notice how the tails are big and small, which kind of makes you think that it's skewed to the left. But wait a minute, isn't the box big on the right and small on the left? And that tends to mean skewed to the right, because take this one. Have you noticed that these 2 are big and these 2 sides are small?
Yeah.
Skewed right. when it's skewed left, you see these two guys are big and these two guys are small. You see how the box and the tail both are agreeing, you know, they're both big. And this one doesn't have anything going on for it. So it's a kind of bit of left, a bit of right, but nothing really has any name to it. So you've seen those kind of things, hopefully.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
When you were doing the mean and the median, I remember
Yes.
we had to subtract the Q1 from the Q3. What was
Oh, yeah. There's a guy called the interquartile range, which is the guy you're talking about. He's called the interquartile. And you get him by taking Q3 away from Q1. Now, I've written my numbers down. I have. So in the example I just gave you, this one here, those are the Q3 and Q1. So the interquartile range would be 10, take away 2.5, which is what, in this case, about 7.5, 7.5.
Thank you.
So the interquartile range is a number that kind of tells you how spread out the data is. If you want to know what it visually is, the interquartile range is the length of that box. Right. So if you can imagine data where the box is quite small and other data where the box is quite big, this one would have a large interquartile range, and this one here would have a small interquartile range. So it gives you a kind of idea of how spread out the data is. It's the equivalent of the standard deviation that you use
So
to
that's
tell
like
how spread out things are.
that's like chapter 9 when it says narrow and wide almost.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're talking about confidence intervals, but you're right. They talk about narrow would be two numbers like these that are really close to each other, right? That would be a narrow confidence interval. Whereas if it was 1.71 to 9.89, can you see that that would be quite a wide interval? So
Yeah.
narrow, not much variation, wide, a lot of variation between the smallest and biggest.
Okay.
If you have a confidence interval where the two numbers are really close to each other, then you're looking at quite a precise confidence interval. Not only do you have a good idea where the right answer is, isn't the right answer very close to each other? So you're not even going to be that far away, even if you don't get exactly the one in the middle. In this case here, couldn't the answer be anything from 2 up to 9, and it could be anywhere? But in this case, aren't you pretty sure that the answer is at least 3 point something? In fact, you know it's a bit more than 3.3 and less than 3.6. So you know it's like 3.45 or 6, right? There's not a lot of choice.